I think you can
Yeah, I think we can get
start. Yep.
started.
I'll
Um,
just watch and let people in as they come, if anybody.
Perfect, thank you. All right, so I think we will go ahead and jump right in. Today we have a special treat of starting to dive into the different clans of the Rose family. So we've done a sessions on Pop Pop, sessions on Grandma Rose, and now we're starting down the 12. So this is really exciting. And thank you, Daniel, for putting out the call for photos, and thank you, Penny, for gathering photos and telling us about Leon's clan today. So the way we'll run it is we'll give 30 minutes to the Leon clan and then 30 minutes to the Tryn clan. We'll be at about 1 hour, so if you need to leave at that point, feel free. And then anyone that wants to stay on to tell more stories, a lot of us stay another 30 minutes after that usually. So I will go ahead and just get us started, and then Penny, when we have maybe 5 minutes left or so, I'll just let you know there's about 5 more minutes for this, and we'll just see how that timing goes. This is the first time we've done this, so we'll just experiment with how much time we feel we need, but we'll keep it to 30 today. So without further ado, I think we're passing it off to Leon's oldest daughter.
It's interesting. I thought we had 20 minutes, and
Oh,
I'm always a fast storyteller, so I might be done in 15 minutes. But other people want to join in,
all
and
good.
I just have a bunch of notes. They're kind of haphazard, but I'll start. I want to end with two funny stories, so I want to end in time. Dad was the second child, the oldest male, and he loved telling stories about his childhood. So what I know is that that group of children were, as always, creative and funny. And some of the things they started with something they called the circus. Has anyone ever heard about that? Yeah. And I believe that was the forerunner to Baratheon Boys Club, which I think is no
Okay.
longer exists. But they were the beginners of the Baratheon Boys Club, which was still going strong my whole time in Baratheon. And he was just a typical Rose. I think had his little feet and everything, and did everything. And they lived at the White House. There's a cat behind me, of course. Lived at the White House on Alden Road, and I have very wonderful memories of visiting that home. Anyway, he went to school in Baratheon. As soon as he graduated from high school, I had to look some stuff up. He began working for Raymond Pitcairn, and I think he was kind of like an office boy. But later on in life, he very much alluded to stuff that he knew that shouldn't ever be known. You know what I mean? And he never did tell. He never did tell. So he went into the Navy. He married my mom, which was Muriel Childs, daughter of Jeffrey and Olivia. And they lived in New York City, which Dad loved to talk about. His big claim to fame was being in the first production on Broadway of Our Town with Helen Hayes. And I think he played just a walk in on that, but I think he also was very involved in the stage production itself. And that he loved that. He loved that. And I love that show to even today. That was 1938. We lived in New York. We lived in a penthouse. He was in the Navy. We lived in Washington for a while in a little crazy housing development that were for service people. But all he ever did was he said he sailed a desk. He was an animator for training films for the Navy, and he did that throughout his life. What I remember is him being an animator for different companies. And the name change. The story I heard was that in the time that he was on an actor on a stage was the whole time of the McCarthy investigations, and so his name Leon Rose sounded very Jewish, and that was apparently not a good time to be Jewish. So that's a story I heard. I don't know how accurate it is, but he changed his name to Leon Rhodes. And I like that name as well as Rose, so I'm stuck with that. He worked in New York. Interesting enough that he almost always worked someplace we did not live. And that's part of his story also. And I'll work a little bit more with that. We moved when I was in second grade, 1950, to the house on Woodland Road. And that is the house that we finally gave to Uncle Stanley and Aunt Gina. And Artie lived there. Do you all know where I'm talking about? So we were right across when Grandma and Pop built a house. We were right across the street from them. But Dad we lived in that house, and he worked in New York. And every Monday morning, he would walk down to the Bernathen station, and every Friday night, he would come back. So do I love the sound of a train and hearing a whistle? Because it meant my dad was coming back. I just love that. One of the things that little house was famous for is my dad, Leon Rhodes, built a pool out of the garage. Does anyone remember that? Anyone alive enough? Yeah, somebody remembers that.
It was Uncle Bob and Aunt Muriel.
No, they had a real pool.
But it was made out of a garage, as I remember it.
I think you're confusing them because ours was definitely a garage. So you're right. He did, but that was my dad, and he made a little deck, and we all swam in it, and it had no filter, by the way, of course. So it just got really dirty. I don't know how he cleaned that out. He was very active in the Bernathen Boys Club, boxcar races, and then he would work. And what I remember is that I loved him coming home. A Friday for me was when life began. And Dad always did things for us all weekend. I have wonderful memories of forts and tree houses and swinging things we broke our arms on and all kinds of stuff like that. All was not well in my household, and my mom died in 1958 when I was 15, and she was about 38. And she died of alcoholism. So there was a lot of sadness there in the family. And that's partly why Dad worked in New York. I think it was their way, honestly, to have a separation. They lived separately. But when she died, he moved home, got a job in Philadelphia, and he invited the Sonsons to move in with us. And I suddenly had 4 little siblings, sort of dad and sort of mom, and the house became alive again. And that was really, really special for me. I loved those kids. So I still do. And then 4 years later, yes, we were invited to Grandma and Pop-Pop's one evening, and Peter and I go over totally oblivious, and my father announces his engagement to Judy Picairn King. I should have suspected because he started acting really, really weird, like he'd disappear with flowers in his hands and not telling us where he went, and that was so unlike him. But he announces his engagement. I don't remember what month, but a few months later they get married. And suddenly Peter and I are moving into a household with 7 children. And I'm the oldest, and Peter's next, and Dorothy's right after that. And we just like our kids stepped down as we were all born together. They went on to have 2 more kids, Pauline and Noel and Pauline. And since 11 wasn't quite enough, they adopted Juliet. And so now there were 12 of us. And I have to say that for 2 families coming from such pain, alcoholism being both in both families, it was absolutely miraculous how well we got together. It really was how well we got along, and we still do. Judy welcomed me in ways I can't even begin to say, including rearranging the whole house, building an addition, giving me my own little room, letting me have her car. She just supported me. I mean, I'm a 19-year-old brat, and she takes me on. I mean, it was amazing. So he, from that point on, did not have to work. But he did work. He was a worker. So he did the Bernathen Post every week, which he took over from Opie Heilman. I bet very few of you know that name. but everybody back then did. He did all the sermon reviews. As a gift from him and Judy, he did the Bernathen Directory every single year. Still very active in the boys club, boxcar races, all that stuff. And one of the stories I wanted to tell from the family point of view, Dorothy and Becky, when we talked about that time in their lives and this strange man coming into their house, you know what they talked about? They smelled bacon cooking every morning. Their dad was home because their other dad wasn't.
Mhm.
And so it was an amazing coming together of two families that were very wounded, and we're still very, very close. My dad was a writer as well as back up, he did Diver Dan. I don't think any of you ever possibly watched that, but he had, wow. Yeah, he did Diver Dan, and he did a couple other little things. He took us to on various trips where he was doing films that we didn't know very much about, but we got to enjoy the trip. He wrote several books. One was called Tunnel to Eternity. One was called, which was near life after death, near death experiences. He wrote a book called Why Survive, which was why bother trying to live when you know you're going to die anyway, and just get over with it. And that was his philosophy, get it over with. And he wrote something called From This Past, What Future, which is the history of Bernathen and Lower Moreland. I think that's all the books that he wrote. He was very connected with Raymond Moody, who wrote near-death experiences. And here's another fun thing. Through Raymond Moody, somehow he got in contact with a prisoner in a Texas prison named Mickey Gore, who had a near-death experience. So remembers that. And Mickey introduced him to a motto. So Dad wrote to these two prisoners, I think every week for as long as he lived. And then when he died, I wrote both of them and said that he had died, and I kept up those correspondences until they got out of prison. So that was something Dad did. They all wanted to come and meet him, and then they all wanted to come meet me. But I knew once they got out of prison, they just have their own lives. I think he had a good personal relationship with both Raymond Moody and Wilson Van Dusen, who wrote Spirits and Madness. I'm racing through my notes. This may be really short. He loved the cathedral. He absolutely loved everything about the cathedral and was a guide even to almost the very end. And a very funny story was my dad, who loved this cathedral so much, died on a Friday morning. On Sunday morning of his funeral, there was an electrical explosion, and they had to close the cathedral, and my dad had his funeral in the all-purpose building. And I remember Uncle Donald getting up and saying, if Leon Rhodes had been told that he was going to have his funeral in the all-purpose building, he would have said, over my dead body. And, he had a big interest in Helen Keller. I know that, and I'm not sure why I wrote that down, but I know that he did. And then on September 10th, 2001, they had a fire in their house. Remember, Sony? And yeah, they had a fire and they had to leave their home. And the very next morning was September 11th. So my poor mom and dad were so traumatized by both those things that I think my dad got confused about those events. And how they knew about the fire was Pauline could see smoke coming out of the ceiling from her out of the roof. And somebody ran over and told them to get out of the house. But they had been cooking and something in the stove caught fire. So they were out of their house for about a year. I think you all know our family, which is Peter and Penny, which grew up being Roses, and then we married this group of 7 people who grew up being Pitcairns and Kings. And then we had two that were Roses and Pitcairns, and then we had Juliet. And Juliet likes to describe our family as his, hers, theirs, and somebody else's. And it really worked. It really worked. And all those people, I think, had a good relationship with Dad. He wasn't a perfect person, but he loved them in his own funny Rose way, you know. And those two little babies that he had late in life, Pauline and Noel. I mean, my memory is that he never put them down. That he just carried them everywhere. And when I started having children, he pretty well ruined them all. By the time they were 3 months, they were addicted to coffee with sugar and cream in it. Because he would hold them on his lap and let them sip his coffee, which meant I never had a peaceful cup of coffee after that. Boy, I am going to finish early, you kids, so you can talk. But I want to tell one more story about his 90th birthday. It was a big birthday, and my mom ordered a big tent. There's a lot of people there. She's planned all these events. There's people getting up and giving talks. Of course, Tony does a beautiful song on the piano. I mean, lots of people are talking about my dad. At the very end, when it's clear everyone has said everything they can, my dad gets up, pulls a piece of paper out of his pocket and says, "I knew you'd forget a few things," and continues giving his eulogy, basically. And that was in July, and he died in October. So I figure he gave his own memorial service. I'm done. I know I have 9 minutes left. Anyone has any questions or wants to share anything? Thank you.
Oh, Penny, that was beautiful. Other stories.
Do you have photographs that you'd want to share? Do we have a set of those? Or we're just going with story?
I'm having trouble hearing Daniel, so I don't know what he just said.
Oh, I was just asking if you had a set of photographs you wanted to go through or not.
I can't. I'm low tech. I have nothing but my
Okay,
voice.
don't worry about that.
Yeah, the memories are great.
What?
I bet there are other stories in this room, and that's probably more important. I do have a under 1 minute audio recording of Uncle Leon talking about giving the tour at the cathedral, if you guys have heard that one. So I can share that if we have time, but anyone else want to share memories of Uncle Leon? Sony.
Well, not surprising, not only was he creative, but he encouraged creativity in others. I see my sister Wendy there, and I think he was a real mentor to Wendy, which is great. And she has a whole career of being creative. But one of my best thoughts was when we were still living together, our Sonnesons with Penny Peter and Uncle Leon. I was at that funny age of 13. Can I go out on Halloween or not? You know, and Carl and Lori are younger, and Uncle Leon decided, let's make them Hansel and Gretel, but they need a house. So he made me into the house, a big cardboard box covered with Nico wafers. And I got to hold Lori and Carl, and I got to get candy at 13, you know. He let me do it, and I'll never forget that. So that was fun.
So I have something to add now to Sony's thing. Dad was creative, and Peter and I will tell you that every Halloween we were made into a costume that was so elaborate we couldn't see or walk. We were houses, we were coffins, we were all kinds of things. And then the first year that my dad, they were married for a while, Mom and Judy and Dad, and there was a costume ball at Glencairn. And Dad made the costumes, and they had just been to Pitcairn Island in South Antarctica. And he made them into penguins, and neither of them could see or walk or sit down for the whole evening.
But they looked great.
They
looked great.
I'm sure I look good in a house too, you know, at age 13. I couldn't see. But Carl and Lori walked me along to keep me from getting run over by cars. It was hilarious.
I have a couple of things.
Tom, yeah.
That's great to hear about him. I'm sorry I came in a little late and didn't hear it all, but yeah, their house. I was the the chaplain of the fire company at the time, and I remember walking he and Aunt Judy through their house post fire as the chaplain. You you kind of accompany them and let them see what happened to their place, and it was just very touching and moving to walk through the debris with them. And then September 11th happened. But I remember I did both of their memorial services. Uncle Leon's I'm like, part of what I had written was look around you in this beautiful cathedral, because he loved it so much. And I think I joked about that at the actual service in the society building gymnasium. I'm like, well, here's what I couldn't say, you know. And he certainly didn't love to be a tour guide of the society building. And Aunt Judy's, I would have loved to have said, look at all the people here who loved her. It was COVID. So everybody was online except her immediate family who were allowed to be together. It was like they both had a situation like that for their services.
Great.
Hers was the cathedral, but it was COVID and no one was there. Not no one, but yeah.
Great.
But anyway, he was Tony worked a lot with him on the Post. So he worked with him directly for years putting together the Bernathen Post.
Wow.
But I didn't work with him like that, but he was a good uncle.
He was.
Just go ahead, Wendy. Yep.
Yes, he was a mentor to me. And starting when we moved into his house when I was about 13, he started giving me encouragement in the arts. But then a little bit later, I think he was a feminist because he really started my career. He taught me how to do things in his office and slice films and he let me do parts of little drawings of the buildings he was drawing. And then he got me a job in Philadelphia with an animation company. And that led to me, getting a resume. He wrote me a letter of recommendation, so I started a career in Boston, and that has kept me going my whole life. And I'm still very grateful to him.
Cool.
I'll jump in real quick because I have so many memories and stories about that your family, Penny, because Pauline and I are, although we're different, we're almost the same age because of the age gap in the spread of the family there. So Pauline and I are literally a month apart in age. And so she feels like a sister to me. And I spent so much time at the house there, the White House at the end on the cul-de-sac, and so much time. And I remember my mom had a great relationship with Uncle Leon. They were good friends, and he and along with Uncle Stanley, she worked with them in animation and in New York and Philadelphia and Detroit and all these different things. So she also had a lot of career stuff thanks to them and thanks to Uncle Leon. And I was always very inspired going into Uncle Leon's office in his house. Like, well, first of all, I thought it was cool he had an office in his house, but there was just this beautiful chaos in there of creativity and paper cutting and just so tangible and beautiful to me. Sorry, it's making me cry a little bit thinking about it.
Yeah.
So it was amazing for me.
Thank you, Lisa.
Oh, sweet.
Oh,
My dad had a child, Pauline. 5 months later, he had his first grandchild. So that's how much his age there is. That my sister and my son are the same age.
Generations blending. I just wanted to also, we're looking at Leon, but I just wanted to show this is something that it comes up more often than you'd imagine, but just that Leon was the illustrator for this book, My Own Four Walls. So these beautiful illustrations, and I just was looking for that acknowledgement of his illustration, which is here in the here's the title. So
Your camera isn't on, Vicky, for you.
Oh.
You can't see what you're showing us.
Oh, really?
Mhm.
Okay. Well, so I'm two windows. So one is audio and one is video. So
Oh, I see.
it
Oh,
looks
there.
like my video is.
I was looking at the
Is
wrong
it?
window. Sorry.
Sorry, my
Yeah.
videos. So there he is. I think, does it say illustrated by Leon Rose?
Yeah.
So I think sometimes we go, did Leon do the picture? So I just was wanting to show that he did get credit for his wonderful artwork on that, and which really is such a beautiful map that we rely on to look at those buildings.
I was able to find the photos that you sent through some time ago, Penny, and I'll scroll through them, and if people want to share a remembrance of what it is, or
Oh, Juliet.
Oh, I've never seen that.
Orchids Solarium, which is a striking feature of their Bernathen home, 12th child of Mr. and Mrs. Rose, who brought her here from Seoul. They inspect the gorgeous Cattleya. I can't quite read that. Cattleya orchids. Anyway.
Oh, that's my family. Mine is great-grandchildren and a couple of other people, but yeah, that's his oldest set of grandchildren.
Nice.
Noel,
I know.
Jenny, and his kids.
Nice.
Everybody remembers Dad in that chair.
That's great.
He could double cross his legs.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, and I remember he was a tall man, but as he said, his legs began under his armpits. When he sat down in church, basically all you saw was his head because his torso was so short compared to his legs.
It might be easier to count the roses that can't double cross their legs.
doing it right now.
My birth mom, Muriel, and that's Dad in his uniform. That's Peter and me, and we were probably in Washington at that point.
That's a great photo.
Bryn has a comment that I'll read out loud here. Let's see. It says, Uncle Leon decorated for wedding receptions in Bernathen for many years. He made Longwood Gardens film about their orchids, which inspired his love of orchids. So creative.
I have a quick memory to share. I can't remember the exact question I asked him. And I think when they were young, they were assigned each a kid to watch over when they would travel. Am I right about that? So they would pair up. But I had asked him something like, which siblings were you closest to, or something like that, and he said, well, Donette was my baby, and he started crying. It was just so sweet.
So this is Dorothy's family, and I have to say that when we have these reunions, we have these Roses, we have these Pitcairn Kings, and we have these other people. Dorothy, because of her relationship with so many of my cousins, she counts herself as a Rhodes. So she's in here, but not everybody is in here. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Not all 12 of us are in these pictures. Oh, Dad's home funeral. You know, he was one of the first people to have a home funeral. He's in that box, by the way, and that's Caronwood Village. We painted the box and we kept him in his bed for 2 days while people came in and gave their regards, and it was really quite something. And we were even on the news. There was a little article on some of the news, a little thing on the news about home funerals. So that was very special. And that box was painted by all his grandchildren and children.
Amazing.
I like that.
Oh.
Again.
Photo.
Yeah. I think it's the same photo.
Yeah.
Yeah. Or maybe not.
Yeah, a little closer up, which is nice to see everyone.
No, there's somebody just put this on Facebook. There's an iconic, I forget what year it was made iconic drawing map of Bernathen with every house and the last name of every house at the time in Bernathen. And it was done by Leon, of course.
So this is Linus, and let me see. This is Jason's family.
Yeah.
Is technically a king, but he was 2. He was 2 years old when we moved into that family. So he definitely can be. Oh, and by the way, there's a couple of Rose people in that family, I think, that they married. Yeah. So yeah.
Tryn Rose.
Yeah.
Tony's daughter.
Galen and Taryn, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I think that's the pictures I have.
That's it, probably.
Yeah, wonderful.
Yeah, thanks.
Perfect. And Penny, we have
Oh, wait.
40 seconds left in your half hour, so that was just perfect.
Wow.
I put a link to the YouTube Diver Dan, if anyone in the chat, if anyone hasn't seen it yet, it's delightful.
Oh, great.
It's really
This is our family reunion. It was actually for Mom's funeral at her death because nobody could be there because of COVID. So we had this maybe 2 years later, and we all went down her graveyard and we finally got together. So that's not all of us, but it's most of us.
Wow.
Wow.
I remember a story about long legs. There were 4 of the brothers and brothers-in-law who, by the time they were teenagers, would pull a trick by sitting together on the couch. And then the challenge to the audience was to tell which of us is tallest. And so Dave Grubb probably won the initial judgment about who is tallest while they were sitting on the couch. Then they stood up, and Leon was the tallest because of the difference in their torso height and leg length. So they got a lot of mileage out of that party trick.
Nice. Yeah, long legs. All right, we'll go ahead and move into, thank you for those stories. And again, we'll stay on after if there are more stories. I think that Leon has had an amazing life and I would love to hear more about him. We'll also cover Tryn, the oldest, today. So Dan and I will be chatting about her. We've got some pictures here and I will just...
And we welcome stories about Tryn and the Grubbs that you remember. Vicky and I didn't actually grow up in Bernathen, where Tryn lived all of her life, I think, in contrast to
She
Leon.
moved to Arizona for a time in her older years.
But
Just do this. Sorry, I'm just going to share it this way. All right, can you see that slide?
yeah.
Okay, great. All right, so yeah, I just wanted to start with this picture of her on the left with Pop Pop as the first child, and then on the right with the 3 generations of Tryn, which is a name I've never heard anywhere else, and except these 3 people. So that was some kind of innovation of Pop Pop, so it was some kind of Welsh reference or something created. So she was born in 1915. As the first child, she worked as a dictaphone operator and typist, and she loved food and cooking and catered for church events and camps throughout her life. She raised 15 children with her husband, Dave, who was not from the church originally. He was raised in Germantown in a Catholic family, and they met, I think, when she was singing in the chorus in Philadelphia. Others may know more about that history than I do. And so she loved food and good food and catered and cooked throughout her life as part of her work. And she knitted a lot of baby blankets and baby sweaters. And I just wanted to talk about that for a moment. And this came up with Leon as well, just this love of babies and children. This is actually Susie, but this is just one of my favorite pictures of adoring a baby. And it just is such an interesting family theme of really loving babies and children, that, with so many children and so much family, some people might be sick of it, but so many of us just really love kids all the more. I also just wanted to show a couple of the dishes she was known for making. So the tea sandwiches, I think that was also a Grandma Rose thing, were popular. So cucumber and cream cheese, watercress and butter. Am I getting these right? These are ingredients in tea sandwiches, I've heard. And then the first time I tried cheesecake was Grandma's cheesecake at a family gathering. And then Marge added meatball sandwiches on homemade Italian rolls, and lemon meringue pie were other memories of her food that Grandma Tryn loved to make.
I have
Go ahead, Dan. Yeah.
anecdote to add about the food, which is that the tea sandwiches were, I think, a hit, but the innovation was what happened with the crusts. They anyone can back me up here. They would cut off the crusts and make them into balls, mix them with mayonnaise or something like that, and people were always like, "These are really good. Where did these come from?" And she was just very resourceful with feeding a large crowd, and for all the events that Leon was up at the dais, kind of giving the speeches or running crowd, Tryn would be feeding the crowd, and so I think they had as the two oldest, they had this partnership, and although they led very different lives, I think they worked alongside each other really well and were part of the team. And I think when I think of Grandma, she was resourceful. She showed up. She did the work. She did the lift, but didn't need to be center stage. And so just wanted to highlight that about her. Anyone remember those crust balls?
Crust balls,
Yeah.
mayo crust balls.
I
Feed a
don't remember.
crowd.
Sounds delicious though.
Gluten balls. Gluten balls.
Gluten balls, we'd call them now. So here is there's a number of pictures of Tryn as a baby, just I think because she was the first, and this one that Dan shared, I just love the adoring look of those parents and the pride. Look at Pop looking at his baby, like we should all be looked at like that, with that adoration, right? I also didn't know Pop had a dimple on his right cheek, which is very cute. And then Grandma there looks so much to me like Judy and Jenny Stewart a little bit to me. So as the first, and there's some wonderful pictures of her. I don't know much more about her as a baby, but just that she was, I guess, in a family of a lot of extroverted, artistic people. I think she was more introverted. Now, she did go into Philly to sing in the chorus, and she was an athlete. I think she was a high jumper actually in the academy. So she was, doing these things. I think, again, we don't think of her as a songwriter or a speaker or things like that, but she was absolutely developing her talents in other ways. And here's another shot of something that I think carries the values of our family, which is the beautiful garden. So we've got Pop with his cigarette in the middle, and Grandma Rose there. I see Sylvia, I see Midge, and then the first several kids of Tryn's. So I think this is the first 5. So David, Harry, Marge, Trinket, Alan. So Alan is right next to my Grandma Tryn, right at the top. And he looks like the youngest there. Although looking at his age, I'm sure she was about to deliver the next one. So, I don't know. Effie would be on the way. Or maybe Effie was around, but not in the picture. So this picture of flowers reminds me of a story. Maybe we've told this before, but the Pink Lady Slippers story, memories that Marge has shared with me, my mom has shared, and especially the older kids. So down in the woods near the penny pack. There was some pink lady slipper orchids that would bloom every year, not always in exactly the same place, but in a certain area. And when they would bloom, Grandma would pack up all the kids and bring sandwiches or a picnic and just spend some time there in the woods among the lady slippers. Of course, they couldn't pick them or touch them, but they would just bask in this unique and special flower that was growing down there. So that was a testimony to me of the importance of nature and flowers and being part of it and appreciating the beauty that was around them, even in the midst of, I'm sure, a very busy life with lots of kids. Another picture of the older kids. I don't think I'd seen this one. So again, this is David, Harry, Marge, Trinket, Alan, Effie, so Frank. And I think these also were probably still years when Pop was, having a fairly public life. So, sometimes these would be of interest to people, or they would be invited on trips or, things like that. Here's a shot of Patrick's baptism. So Patrick, I think, is right toward the middle.
I think he's in Mom's arms.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sorry. I meant to say age-wise. He's a little below the
Oh,
middle. So yeah, I think Robert's the middle. Yeah, so he is actually the last. Some of the last.
Patrick Kelly. Yeah.
Yeah. So we've got my mom sitting with glasses, holding the baby there, and that would have been a typical arrangement. So I think Grandma did a lot of the cooking, and then the older kids did a lot of the child care, and certainly would have had assigned kids for things like bedtime. And just because of the pace that babies were being born, it would be a pretty small amount of time that they would be nursing with Grandma, and then at a pretty young age be handed off to some of the older kids to take care of. My mom and Marge talk about when Grandma was having a baby, eventually they were born at home, and then eventually she was going into the hospital, and they, at those days, I think, have her rest for a couple weeks, so she might be gone for a week or two. And Luella would come, so she was just someone that would be hired to come take care of the kids while she was in the hospital. So there are a lot of Luella stories, and she would clean the whole house with bleach top to bottom. So the smell of bleach evokes Grandma's having a baby. So if you come in the door and you smell bleach, it means Mom's having a baby at the hospital, because Luella's here. All right, I love this one because it looks more like just an ordinary day of playing and hanging out. Child with a broken leg. It's not funny. It's just probably characteristic of what life was like. I know Louie broke a leg. That child doesn't look like Louie to me, but it might be.
It's Mark.
It's Mark.
Mark, thank you. Okay.
Who remembers the story of the leg? Anyone? You remember, Chaz?
I think you got hit by a car.
No, he fell in one of the bedrooms, and Susie says that he was like fooling around with her rug, and she grabbed the rug or something, and he fell and broke his leg. And years later, she had to confess to him that it was she who broke his leg.
Oh. So I think this is a good place to talk about resilience and survivorship of this family. So, having a big crowd of kids, lots happening, very active. Some kids broke more bones than others, but certainly there was a lot of resilience asked of the family by their circumstances.
Alan broke 22 bones.
Alan's the high scorer, I would say, of that. And and then sat at a computer for many years after that. So you never know. Kids can grow out of daredevil behavior.
I didn't start breaking bones until I turned 60. Now I've broken my leg, I've broken my arm.
Good. You took over
I'm
for Alan.
a late bloomer.
Not too late to catch up. Yeah.
I love this beautiful shot. And of course, Chaz is just adorable there at the top. Patrick, Louis, Patrick, we see Mark. Chaz is at the top. Who's on the right, stretching his hand out?
That's Mark.
That's Mark. And then who's on the left?
Andy.
Andy. So just something that might not be obvious to everyone or known is that there were 11 boys and 4 girls in the family. So that really also did give a character to the household, I would imagine, on some level in terms of just the type of energy that was running through the yards and halls and things like that. And I guess
that photo of the 5 boys, 5 youngest boys, was called the Wolf Pack.
Wolf Pack.
Gives you an idea.
Yeah.
Their character.
The character. The vibe. The vibe was Wolf Pack. Yeah. So here you do see the 4 girls across the center. So the oldest is Marge on the right, then my mom on the left, Susie, and then Alice is the youngest one there, with assorted other boys that we could name. Patrick is easy to pick out of a crowd. Well, I guess a lot of ears. There are a lot of ears in the family.
Yeah.
I'm looking at the Billy's got ears. Lissa's, Pat's got ears. Who's at the very top? Is it Harry? Between Susie and Marge is Harry.
No, I think it's Robert.
Oh, okay. So Robert had some ears. Yeah. But look at those smiles. Completely adorable.
And the girls' ears are covered up by their hair.
Who knows what's happening with those ears, right?
Yeah.
We don't really know.
And I suppose by virtue of being in such a large family, there was quite a bit of sitting for photos like that. I don't know if that's a dominant memory of your childhoods. We'll have some open sharing in a minute. You can tell us about that. So here's a famous series of photos. So there was a fabric. So you see it on Roseanne's pants here on the right. There was a Grubb fabric that someone found and made a lot of clothing out of. And then this was one of the photo sessions featuring. So Roseanne's got those on. I think in the center is that Dave has some Grubb pants on. Alice in the white shirt looks like she's got some Grubb pants on as well. You see Grandma here in the center bottom, at Mary holding Mikey, my mom holding my oldest brother Chris, Susie holding my sister Tryn. I see Rachel. Marge is holding Rachel in the lower left-hand corner. Lots of other familiar faces there. A handsome Chris Clark on the left, next to Alan.
Marge has the real story about the Grubb pants.
Oh, okay. We are almost there. We'll open up the floor in just a second. So here's some Grubb pants, artsy arrangements and cuteness.
Right.
Here are the 4 sisters. I believe this was a day that they were going to get together, and then they just all showed up wearing the same color, and that was kind of a fun coincidence. And that's a Paul Mergen necklace on my mom on the left. One thing I wanted to share about Grandma that I found out. So I told my mom once, when I'm watching a parade, I just burst into tears for no reason. It's not really something I do generally, but it just somehow makes me so emotional when a parade is going by. And she said, my mom did the same thing. So Grandma Grubb, here she is at a 4th of July parade, maybe finished crying, maybe about to cry, but there's just something about the bigness or the excitement that, so I was really excited to hear I inherited that quality from her. And here is a picture of the 15 as adults. I don't think it was very frequent that all 15 were together. This was for their father's funeral.
It was
in
the
90,
only time ever.
the only time ever. So this was 1990, I believe, spring,
89, 90. Yeah.
and a lot of cups of coffee. So this was obviously a morning shot of everyone getting together, and this is age order. So if you know the song, you can put a face to the name of who we're looking at. It's a good place to see who was the tallest also. A lot of tall people.
Can you do the names from left
Oh,
to right? Just
sure.
'cause I
Let's
just
sing
want
it.
to, yeah.
Who would like to
Grub,
sing the
grub, grub,
song?
Grubb. Grub, 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 Grubb.
David, Harry, Marty, Trinket, Alan,
Alan,
Effie,
Effie,
Susie,
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 Robert,
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 Billy,
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 Alice,
Alice,
Louis,
Lou,
Andrew,
Andy,
Patrick, Charlie,
Charlie,
Mark.
Mark. Okay.
Now it's on the record. We've got the recording.
Yeah.
When the tallest grub was announced, Trinket also took the honor of the densest, uh, the most kilograms per inch of the 15. So she wanted to be distinguished as well.
And she gave all the credit to as much half and half in her coffee as she darn well pleased. And that's how she lived her life.
I want you to notice, that we had been together for a few days at this point, and every day it was denim and plaid. And on this particular day, I'm not wearing any damn denim or plaid.
Break away.
I'm
Break
rebelling
away.
in this photo.
You look rebellious. So later in life, Grandma did move to Arizona for a time. She took a train trip around the country to visit family and friends, and I think got some of that adventuring that she may have wanted to do sooner, but did get a chance to do at an older age. She ended up moving back from Tucson because I think she was lonely and it was just a different situation, and she had really grown up in the midst of crowds and people and family her whole life, so it was a great adventure, and she came back home after that. So here's a great spirited photo of her in that age range, and I love to think of her dancing like that, and just especially in her later years, maybe enjoying a feeling of freedom. And I think I learned at the 2021 reunion that I don't know who had this fact in their head, but she was always cooking and always had lots of food, and they ended up using food that she had cooked and put away in the freezer to serve at her memorial service. So she is the only people that we know of, that I know of, that made the food for their own memorial, but it was absolutely appropriate for her because that was her role, and the role that she enjoyed was feeding and nurturing people. So I believe it was banana bread. Others may have more to add to that. But those are some photos. Let me just see. There's a few more here. I'm not sure if they.
One thing I wanted to say about this picture is that it shows kind of the carefree sense of humor that I think Tryn had. And even in her old age, she's still wearing a name tag. She's on duty. And one of the things that I love about her and all of the 12 is that they would show up. They showed up at everything in Bernathen, and I think the amount of energy that they put into the community activities and just keeping everything going is really one of the things that I admire about them. And it just, when I think about Ken, when I think about Leon, when I think there's just so much that they showed up for, and Grandma was a big part of that, and I'm really proud of that aspect and admire that about them.
Yeah, spirit of service. And I'll just add, because I see a purse in her hand. So my mom had a memory of, like, Grandma would put important documents into her purse, right? And then when the purse got kind of full, she would just put it in like a file cabinet and then get a new purse and then fill that with stuff. So then if it was like, oh, where's the receipt for this? Or where's Harry's birth certificate? She would go back to the purse that she had been carrying at that time. So just any of you that
That sounds like a system I'm going to adopt right now.
I don't want to put a label on things, but any of you that have a brain that works that way will really appreciate that tip. Yeah. All right. I think I'll leave her picture up and just ask if there are more memories. We have about maybe 7.5 minutes left in our half hour for Grandma, and we're coming up on 10:30. So if you do need to hop off at 10:30, feel free.
Michelle posted in the chat. I want to make sure everyone saw it. I have a list of what I think are her sandwiches. 800 sandwiches, 100 of each. Pimento cream cheese, cucumber and mayo, watercress and cream cheese tuna salad, mayo, celery, green pepper, and asparagus mayo.
Wow.
So there you go.
Delicious.
No mention of bread balls.
Well, I know about the bread balls because I got recruited into the catering business from a very young age and learned to shuck oysters when I was like 7. And so for the clam bakes and catering that they did for different parties and families. But the bread balls were usually mixed with some of the fillings that were going in the tea sandwiches. So ham and cheese spread, or sometimes smoked like a salmon spread. That would all just get mashed up with the bread crusts and deep fried, and they were more popular than the sandwiches. More bread balls.
I received a bit
You
of
call them
wisdom.
croquettes.
Croquettes, yes,
Make
very
them
fancy.
sound better
Very
than bread
fancy.
balls.
I received a bit of wisdom through Denise Cowley that came from Grandma. She said that when you're catering an event, like a funeral or whatever, the way that you calculate the amount of food you're going to bring is it's 7 bites per person. And, that defies belief that, people would, but on average, some people aren't going to eat, some people are, and they're going to have. So I pass that on to you in case you ever need it. It's really only 7 bites per person is the perfect amount of food.
That's amazing.
I've never heard of that unit of measurement, but I'm sure it's the wisdom of experience.
Yeah.
She learned the hard way, I'm sure.
I like her thinking about her counting how many bites people are taking, like watching or something. I don't know how you would calculate that. I was, of course, again, I was at the young end of the family. And we lived, where Donald lived, Donald and Barbara live now on 2643 Alden Road, right next to the Madhouse. And my age was in between the older cousins who were having kids and their kids were little. So we did a lot of babysitting we called them the Grublets. I don't know if that was our family or a bigger family thing, but the Grublets are coming over, and we had Grublets in our house all the time, and we'd go over to Evie and Shag's house and babysit there. I have a lot of memories of babysitting there. Robert, Denise. Now, Rachel was the same age as me, so their kids were older, but I spent a lot of time with Rachel, and did a lot of work as a helper catering with Aunt Tryn, and so spent a lot of time in did they live down in what's the building that's condemned now there? Did they live downstairs in that, Aunt Tryn, Uncle Dave?
I think they lived in every single one of those.
Okay, because yeah, you're probably right. But I think I remember going down into that house and doing, making tea sandwiches and stuff. And I remember being a little kid when I was little, I thought those tea sandwiches were the fanciest thing I had ever seen in my life. To be able to have a tea sandwich was so fancy. But being in that area, a huge part of my childhood and life, just going in and out of those houses and spending time with Aunt Tryn and all the cousins there. And it was, that's where I grew up. So,
in addition to all the other things she was doing, when I was in high school, she ran a bread company. Like, she baked dozens of loaves of bread a week and sold them at the cheese shop. And I I would do all the labeling. I'd make fancy labels and wrap them. And I had to hike them over the hill to the cheese shop, on foot, for some reason. Um, but she made little fancy loaves of different kinds of banana nut, of course, and all kinds of other little. She would cook at least a half a dozen different kinds of bread, every week for the cheese shop for years. Crazy.
I never heard that.
That's amazing.
She also did a lot of knitting for the needy. I remember coming in to visit every day, and there would be a stack of maybe 10 baby sweaters, hats, and just a crazy amount of knitting all the time. And also, when she was in elementary school, she performed like an Isadora Duncan dance at the Del West in Philadelphia, the outdoor performing arts. Just some
Wow, I
memories.
didn't know that. That's amazing.
Robin Hood Dell.
Yeah, I believe that's it's called. The outdoor, it's the Philadelphia Orchestra's summer performance area.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, I probably knew her. Oh, Sony's got her hand up.
So 50 years ago, she catered my wedding. I'm about to have my golden anniversary this year. And I remember I can see the food spread right there and her smiling face behind it. So I have a happy memory of that gift.
Nice. Billy tells the story of so Billy was very attentive to how hard she worked, and when he got married, and he got married pretty young, 20 or something, and he said, Mom, I just want you to enjoy this wedding. We're going to have someone else do the catering, and I just want you to be front and center and be the mother of the groom. And he said she never forgave him for that. she was not happy. She never asked for this. This is not her role. It's not where she's comfortable. So that was part of the getting to know her and the wisdom of age that he gathered was like, oh, this is who she is. And so if he had it to do over again, he'd probably just let her cook. But
And I think his lifelong penance has become for him to be the caterer
now he's
for
the caterer.
all the subsequent family events.
Yep. He's catered many Thanksgivings and Christmases for us out here in Arizona. It's true. Yep.
I just say real quick that another piece of this, like I said, grew up in that whole area, but there was always a sense of like with that many kids and everything. I feel like there was a sense with my mom and Aunt Tryn that they were just, it was unspoken, just like if your kids need to come over, just come on over. If we needed to go, like she had to run out and do something, we just went over to Aunt Tryn's. There was just not even we just show up as far as I don't even know if she called her or anything, so I had that feeling growing up there is that it was just an exchange of duty and helpfulness that was always present there.
It was like a school of fish.
Exactly. You just go where you need to go.
That stood out about Leon's family, as Penny talked about. The history of your family is this sense of the more the merrier, and there's always room for someone else at the table. It's really
Absolutely. That was throughout the whole Rose clean up, pop up, and Grandma, I think, instilled that in all their kids. So just open door, come on in.
So
I think Michelle was going to say something. Oh, go ahead.
Oh, I was going to ask if Marge could tell the story of the Grubb pants.
Yeah.
Okay. I worked in North Philadelphia in the daycare program for impoverished children, so deep in the heart of the difficult parts of North Philadelphia. But what used to be there and isn't anymore, I'm feeling very sick right now, so if I get weird, it's me. It used to be a factory area. It used to be that's where all those houses and things came from. It being factory workers and factories. There were a few left. and they had factory outlets. And you could go in and buy leftover stuff that wasn't quite right that they couldn't sell. And so there's this Robert Bruce sportswear company had a factory there, and they had a casual line that was called Grubb. Robert Grubb. It was called Robert Grubb. And they even had a yellow t-shirt with Robert Grubb on the front. I never could find one of those in the outlets, but I had seen it pictured. And they had that fabric, Grubb pants, and they made shorts, Bermuda shorts, and those sporty pants that you see everybody wearing. And I went in there one day and was astonished to see these pants that said Grubb all over them. And none of them fit me, but I bought them all. There were 2 or 3, and brought them home and handed them out to whoever they would fit. And so I made a habit of every few weeks I'd go back to the Robert Grubb sportswear company and buy more Grubb pants and bring them home and hand them out to people. I did for a while have my own Grubb pants that I would wear, but I suppose I grew out of them because I didn't wind up with any of them coming along with me. Someone much later saw online, if you look at, things for sale or vintage fabrics, someone saw the Grubb fabric for sale. And I didn't know how to do things online, but I told them, buy it, whatever it costs. But we never ended up with any. But somehow that turned around to somebody thought that all the aunties that loved to sew would get this fabric and make these clothes. No, it was the Robert Grubb sportswear company.
Amazing.
Fun.
All right, I wanted to just briefly talk about a couple things coming up and membership. We can go back to storytelling if we like. So I'm going to share 2 things. One is upcoming events. I'm going to move this over here. So I'm sharing portions of my screen, so that's why it sort of jumps around a little bit here. Okay. So upcoming events. So Rose Social, we're a nonprofit organization, and we are running these storytelling gatherings. Our next one is April 4th, and we are hoping to talk about Rose ancestry. So the deeper, the larger clan of Roses based in Scotland and that have organizations here in the US. So that's, we hope to see you there. The following Saturday, the 11th, is Rosapalooza planning, which everyone and anyone is welcome to. We will be having a Rosapalooza next summer in 2027. June, July, I think, is what we're aiming for, just like last time. So we've started planning for that. And then Saturday, May 2nd, we think maybe we would do the same thing that we did today, but for Roy and Muriel. So we're gathering that together, and take notice if you're in those clans. We may be reaching out to you to ask if you would like to tell some stories or supply some photos for that. So this organization is something you can join. It is $12 per year, and maximum of $36 per household, so you can register multiple members of your family. And if you are a QR code person, you can just aim your camera at that QR code there. If that's not something that you're accustomed to, we can put an email in the chat right now. Lisa, I don't know what email you'd want to choose for that. You can reach out by email to say that you'd like to become a member, and we can do the transaction that way. But we've been quite active and are just, I think, really thrilled with the turnout and the storytelling that we're getting done with these gatherings. Very excited about the Rosapalooza. We've had our first meeting about it and concluded that we loved everything we did last time, and we'll probably try to match that again if we have the people stepping up to volunteer and the energy to do it. So we'd love to get your participation and interest in that. All right.
And Vicky, I don't know if you want to mention that there's also in the works trying to coordinate a trip to see Missy's opera. So that was not in there, but.
Oh, yes. Do you want to say, so yeah, do you want to, I'll share just an image of the opera if you want to talk a little bit about it. Lisa, I'm very excited about this.
Just in case anybody doesn't know, Missy Mazzoli, who's a cousin of the Royd family, is a composer and has composed many operas. She was a year and a half ago or something, or a year ago, commissioned by the Metropolitan Opera to write an opera for them, which is just about the pinnacle of accomplishment, to be invited to write an opera for the Met. Anyway, it's going to be at the Met in New York, the end of October and the beginning of November. And so we're going to coordinate, Vicky is spearheading, coordinating us cousins going at the same time to see the opera. Everyone would be responsible for their own lodging and tickets and all that kind of thing, but to try to have a mass of people come on the same day is our goal. And then perhaps if there's energy around it, meeting somewhere, having dinner together, or going to some other thing in New York together, things like that. So those, it's very much still in the works, but we just want to mention it so that people can sort of have it on their radar. And since it's in New York, it's close enough to many people who live in Bernathen, and maybe you can come up for the day. It wouldn't need to find lodging or anything like that, but stay tuned.
Stay tuned. And I will just mention that she is the first woman to be commissioned by the Met to write an opera, ever.
Oh.
Ever. She is the first woman. She also runs a nonprofit to mentor young women composers, and she's just an amazing person. So we did this kind of field trip also in Chicago to see another opera of hers, The Listeners, and we ended up having lunch with her and Royce Vavrek, the librettist that she works with, and it was just an amazing treat. It was such a thrill. So again, stay tuned. We're narrowing down the dates that might work. So that October 19th to November 14th, it's not every day of that run, so it's just certain days. So we'll be reaching out by the same email address that you get your announcements on, to talk about what day it will be, the gathering, or the Rose onslaught. But we're very excited. Yeah. And I see some hands up. Rachel.
Oh, if you didn't see it, I found a pair of the Grubb pants on eBay.
For only $225.
$225. If anybody wants to grab those, now's your chance.
Grandma would never at that price.
No.
But
well, and also just if any of the Grubbs have their pants, it's a new revenue stream for you there, apparently.
That would be fun to see. And Sony has a hand up.
So on April 4th, I'm going to be shifting my fascination with ancestry from the Rose ancestry line over to Grandma Rose's connection to Mayflower. I started with information from Michelle Rose, and then I handed this project over to my daughter named Heidi.
Yeah.
And she went nuts on familysearch.org, which is a Mormon free place you can do things. And we not only have 2 people on the Mayflower that are our ancestors, we have 16.
Oh my gosh.
Oh my gosh.
16.
The more the
And
merrier.
we now know about them, and we've looked them up, and who was the governor of this, and who was the undertaker, and who was the this and that. So that's
Wow.
been fun. And right now I'm listening to an audiobook written by one of these people named William Bradford. He was
Wow.
there, and he
Wow.
wrote a book, and they found it, and I can listen to it now. It's 400 years old.
That's
Our
incredible.
ancestor. So I
Sony.
just love this stuff.
So
Some
we're
of those-
hoping,
some
Sony,
of
that
those-
that
yeah.
you and or your daughter would be willing to present or tell us what you've learned at that meeting if you're
I
available.
will.
We'll reach
And
out
you
to
give
you.
me some time limits in case somebody else, like
Sure.
there's several of you who have gone to Scotland and looked at the Rose stuff. But I need to mention another name.
Yeah.
Not Rose, Ross. Ross is grandma's ancestor in Scotland. So I need to go back to Scotland and find their castle. But I haven't
It
done it
sounds like another field trip, Sony. So
I know.
let's
What
get
else do I
ready.
do in retirement, right? But anyway, Ross and Rose are not the same thing, and they didn't know each other, and they didn't intermarry until you get down to Grandma and Papa.
Amazing.
So much
Thank
fun.
you. That's exciting.
Yeah.
That's wonderful. Yeah, and Stephen Cole, maybe you already have this information, but Stephen Cole had traced Grandma's line back 10 generations to England. There was a toddler that came over. So if you don't have it back that far, he does have that. And I've got those names, but it sounds like you've gotten all the way back to England with
All
her.
the way back to the 1100s.
Okay, I can't wait. I'm so excited.
I know, and only the fancy people, the people who owned a castle would actually have their birth and stuff written in some document. The peasants that we were mostly didn't always have their birth and death written down somewhere. But if there's a written document that's reliable, the Mormons will find it. And so it's really fun to see. Anyway, so having a great time just exploring, learning about our past.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Penny, for talking about your dad. There were a lot of things I learned about him today, and I just really appreciate your stories. And thank you to Daniel and everyone who's told some stories today.
And if everyone on this, remember, the more the merrier. If everyone on this call invited one person next time, we'd have quite a crowd. And we want to keep encouraging. One of the big goals is to encourage us to share the stories so they don't get lost. Most people's legacies don't last past a generation because you don't have the connection, the personal connection. But that's part of our goal, is to continue the thread.
And we have an opportunity to make up new stories too.
Exactly.
With the help of AI, perhaps.
Yeah.
Yeah, they talk about false memories like it's a negative thing, but it doesn't have to be.
Oh, what fun.
Great. Well, thanks everybody for coming. I really appreciate you taking the time. It's great to see everybody, and thanks for all the stories and all the time you put in, Penny and Vicky and Dan. It was wonderful.
See y'all.
Love to all of you. So the link to this video should be up. It's been slower in the past, but we think it's going to be more efficient and more successful this time. So watch for that link to this recording if you want to share it.
Oh, and this link, the Zoom link that you came to today, is now set up as the permanent link. So that's always going to be the link we use for the meeting. So you should be able to just save it somewhere and always jump in on that link.
But I don't know what I would do.
Wonderful.
Put it in your purse and put the purse in a box. And
I think you changed the time of this because every first Saturday we have a Henderson sibling breakfast, and I never could come. Now it's 11:30. I don't think it was before, right?
It's been 11:30 for a while.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay. Well, this is good. This is good.
Yeah. Yeah. 11. We always try to make it Saturdays at 11:30. Sometimes the time of the month changes due to holidays or things like that, but we always try to do 11:30 Eastern time, 11:30 Eastern time on Saturdays.
And as much as possible first Saturday of the month if we can. That's even I think the Saturday before Easter, I think we just still kept it on this first Saturday just to make it predictable for people.
Yep.
Love you all.
Thank you for
Bye.
leading.
Thanks, everybody.
Appreciate it.
Bye.
All right. I'm going to put this address in a sticky note. So Lisa, if you have a minute to stay on, I can just show you the...
I'll stop the recording.
Yeah, so